All right, hello once again. This is Jeff Scott, Information Technology Instructor at Rankin Technical College, and I've been going over the PowerPoints for Murachs HTML5 and CSS3 3rd edition for the AWD Application and Web Development 1000 Web Technologies class. I'm almost halfway through, so I'm starting right now Chapter 9 of 18. As you can see, the chapter is on images and how to work with images. We've got 3 applied objectives. First, use HTML to include images on a web page and CSS to align and float these images. Use HTML to add figure and figure caption elements to treat the image as a figure. Use HTML to create what are known as image maps. And we have 5 knowledge objectives. List and describe the 3 types of images that are used for websites. Describe the proper use of the image element and its related CSS. Describe the use of figure and fig caption elements with images. Describe the use of thumbnails, image rollovers, and image maps. And describe the use of image editors and tools for creating favicons. So here are your 3 basic types of images. There are JPEGs. JPEG is an acronym. It's like joint photography. It's in here someplace. I don't remember what it is. Engineering group or something like that. And these are typically used for photographs and scanned images. They can include millions of colors. They're what are known as lossy, so when you compress them, they can oftentimes lose a lot of their quality, and they don't support transparency. You've got GIFs, which is a graphic interface format, I believe. Typically, it's used for logos and very plain types of illustrations. They can only hold up to 256 colors. They can be used for animation, and they don't lose as much of their information when you compress them, and they support transparency on a single color. Finally, you've got ping. All right, I'm back. And so ping is portable network graphics, and it's designed, for lack of better words, to kind of be a cross between JPEG and ping. All right, typically it's used as a replacement for ping. Typically these files are smaller than GIF compressed files, and no information is lost. They can represent millions of colors like JPEGs. They support transparency on multiple colors, which neither of the other two do. And these files are supported by all modern browsers. I guess on the bottom of 323. JPEG is Joint Photographic Experts Group. GIF is Graphic Interchange Format. And ping is Portable Network Graphic, if I got any of them wrong. All right, so how do you include an image on a page? Here's some JPEGs, there's some GIFs. All right. You must add a source attribute because that's the name of the file that you want to add, the image file. Common sense says you should always use an alt tag for 2 reasons. Number one, if the file doesn't exist, maybe you typed it in wrong or you gave it a wrong path, then the alt is what will show there. And also it helps for people who are visually impaired so that their browser can tell them what this is about. So again, both of these are actually considered required today. The height and width are not required. That's the height of the image in pixels and the width of the image in pixels. If you provide them, what you end up doing is you end up letting the browser know exactly how much space to put aside for the image. And it's considered, again, a good thing to do. Now, if you don't put them in there, then you'll typically put them into your CSS. The height and width become a relative or absolute value that specifies either the height or the width of the image if it's different from its original size. So here you see it. Here we have added the height and width, and here we have command, and notice now we've used CSS to change the height and the width so you can see the difference. Now when you do this, notice what we've done. We've got 300, 400, 150, 200. So in essence, what we've done is we've cut this down to half of its size. You can run into trouble if you try to rescale the height and the width, and you don't make them pretty much the same dimensions that they had. All right. Some accessibility guidelines for images on the bottom of page 325 and on the slide here. For images with useful content, always quote an alt attribute. For images used for decoration, something like this. You know, I guess you could argue and say that is, or maybe not. I guess it depends. But if that's the case, quote the alt attribute as an empty string. So just double quote, double quote. Now, when we start talking a little bit more depth and breadth of coverage about aligning images, this is vertical alignment that's on pages 326 and 327. The vertical align property is where you give either a relative or an absolute value or a keyword that determines the vertical alignment for the image. The keywords are the ones shown below. Bottom aligns the bottom of the image box with the bottom of the box that contains the adjacent image or inline elements. Middle kind of centers it, so puts it in the midpoint of the containing block. Top aligns it with the top. Text bottom aligns the image box with the bottom of the text in the containing block. And text top aligns the image with the top of the text in the containing block. So what you want when you do this is, do you want it to look like this or do you want it to look like this? So you notice here it's aligned on the bottom, here it's aligned in the middle. Now they don't show it, but with the top, as you'd guess, it would be, well, I guess this is the top. Hard to tell here. But that is the bottom, and I guess, I don't know. Again, it's very, very hard to tell. I think that's the middle. Now, different properties that you can use for floating images include, float itself. You know what float is. Float is the keyword that determines how the image is floated. The values are left and right. Of course, there's none, which is the default, which means don't do any floating at all. There's also the clear keyword, and the clear keyword determines if an element that follows a floated element flows into the space that's left there. All right. And you can float to the left, float to the right, float both, or float none. Now here's an example where we're floating the image to the left, all right, and floating the text around it. So this is probably here. This is no floating. This is probably a float left. This very well could be a float left also, and here we've cleared the float. All right, so it's always, by default, an image is a block element. So if you don't do floating, this will be here, and these three bullets will be down below, and this will just be white space right here. So basically, you use the same techniques to float an image that you use to float any other type of block element. Okay? All right. So, starting on 330, some advanced skills for being able to work with images include, among other things, the figure and figcaption elements. So when we look here, here is the figure and here's the figcaption right there. So this can be used with anything that's used as a figure. You can use it for an image, you can use it for a table, but image is often used as a figure, so that's the one that they show here, and that's the one you probably would use most often anyway. By default, a figcaption element is an inline element, not a block element, so you want to use CSS to display it the way you want it to look. Now you can get the same results without using HTML5 elements, but again, using figure and figcaption are semantic, so it's very easy to tell that the image is used as a figure. Okay. All right. Thumbnails. You've all seen thumbnails before when you click on one of these and it shows the bigger image. So here we've clicked on what? This one, I guess, and it's showing here. Okay, no, I guess it's that one, and it's showing here. All right. So for some pages, you'll want to display a list of images because they can fit more on a page. However, you still want to provide a way for the user to see the real size. You know, the example they give here on page 332 is you might want to display small images of products, and when you click on any of them, you get a larger image. And typically, again, that's done with a series of thumbnails. All right? As the name implies, okay, they'll all be the same size, or usually they are. Sorry. All right, so starting back up again here, we just talked about thumbnails, and I did want to make sure that you heard this so that you are, I like to, at least on occasion, be able to put stuff in here that's not just shown in our text. And that is a site that I use quite often. So let's see, I might have a graphic here of my granddaughter. Oops. Don't know if I have any listed right out here or not. There is one, but do I have any graphics out here? No. Do I have any here? Yeah, here is that graphic, so you can see how big it is. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this. I'm not going to do a save as. I shouldn't have to do anything for it. It's right here. But I'm going to go out to a website that is makeathumbnail.com. All right, and choose my file. Well, I want to choose that one that I just showed you. So that is out here and here. All right, so I want to make it 100 by 100. I do that, it throws it out on the internet for me and lets me see where it is. So if I give it that path, now you saw how big the original one is. There it is. All right, so that's a really easy way. The problem with using Make a Thumbnail is you only have a few sizes that you can choose from. I believe you can't do any customization. So it's got to be either 100 by 100, 150 by 150, 200 by 200, 250 by 250, or 300 by 300. The good news is, though, it's free, very quick, and it's very capable. All right, so here's the HTML that you would use if you were creating a group of thumbnails. So again, a thumbnail is just a small version of an image used to make downloading faster. You can use an image editor. You can use what I showed you, and there are other packages like that also. A thumbnail is typically used as the image for a link that displays the page in a larger version. There's other ways you can do this, and in Chapter 15 we'll learn how to work with this stuff using JavaScript. You can also use image rollovers. All right, and that means that if you take the mouse and put it over it, that the image will change. So that's what an image rollover is. It gets changed when the mouse hovers over it. One way to do that is to use background images and the hover pseudo class selector. When you do it this way, the first background image is applied to a block like a paragraph tag, and the second is displayed when the mouse rolls over it. It's relatively simple. But again, if you want to be able to do a little bit more work with it, you'll typically use a product like JavaScript, which again we'll look at in Chapter 15. So here's the associated HTML. All right. And here, so you'll notice that it's just a blank ID with nothing in it. Right now, we got the ID, I should say it's going to be set to h1.jpg with this height and width. When you hover over it, it'll be h2.jpg. So it's a simple way to change things if you're so inclined. All right, next we talk about an image map. In an image map, it's much easier to show you an image map. US image map. All right, so here's an example. I'll grab one that's colorful, so there we go. All right, and you'll notice if I take my mouse and I click on Missouri, what does it do? Well, in this case, it looks like it's not doing very much, but let's try a different one. Image map of the human body. See if we can get a little more luck with that one. All right. So if I take my mouse and I click on certain things, it'll show me. And again, these are not good examples. I thought I had a good one, and evidently I don't. Nope. Let's type image map example. Well, here's one they're using, so let's try this again. Well, there you go. Typically, when you do something like this, you'll click on the image map. Just look at this one. All right, so if we click on a planet, what is it doing? It's giving us information on that planet. See that? All right. Okay. So you can use an image map. When you do that, you use the useMap attribute, which identifies the related map element. The attribute of the map element has the name attribute, which provides a name for the map. Then you give it an href, which specifies a relative or absolute URL that identifies a page that will be displayed when you click the area. A shape, which is rectangular, circular, polygraph. The coordinates that you want, and the text that you want. Now, unfortunately, years ago, I did a really nice image map, but I don't think I have it anymore. And I can check, but like I said, I don't think I have it anymore, but I'd love to show it to you, so let's just double check. And what I did was I used Mount Rushmore. And I used the presidents that were in Mount Rushmore, and I made an image map based on that. All right. All right. I don't know what to say other than I'm sorry that the heat keeps going on, and I have to keep pausing this, but if you decide you want to be able to change the size of an image, you'll probably have to use some kind of an image editor. Now, some of them that are very good are very expensive, okay? Photoshop is one of the ones that's best known, but there's also one that's called GIMP, G-I-M-P, which is a good editor, and it's free. The only thing about GIMP is you don't have total control, so if my width was on the image was a certain width, and I tried to make it this exact width, the system will try to make it as close as it can, but it may not be this. It may end up being 389 by 256 or something like that, so it'll do the best it can. So the primary use of an image editor is to size images and then save them in the right format so they'll load as quickly as possible. By default, an image is displayed on a page only after the entire file has been loaded. Sometimes that's okay, but when you have a very intricate image, sometimes what you want to do is you want to create what's called a progressive JPEG or an interlaced GIF or an interlaced ping, where it basically you get kind of a ghost image of what the image looks like. So at least you can see that something is loading. Okay? So again, typical editing operations to change the size, the image type, or the quality, control the animation, save it with transparency, and get the coordinates. Popular image editors include Adobe Photoshop CC, Adobe Photoshop Elements, and GIMP, which again is free. If an image with transparency is displayed over a colored image, the background color shows through. If the image with a transparent color is displayed over a colored background, a matte of the same color will help the image blend into the background. And they show the differences between here and here. There's with the background color, and there's a matte pretty much where you've got a little bit more control. All right. The next thing that's discussed here is how to get free images, and the author gives you all sorts of different places that you can go to get those, but also talks here about Creative Commons. And Creative Commons, usually what that implies is that you're able to use images for free, but you might, for example, you might have to give attribution. So you can use the image as long as you give credit requested by the author, or you provide a link to the website that provides the image. All right, there's also share alike, where you can distribute the image based on the license that governs the original work. There's non-commercial, where you can use the image and images derived from it for non-commercial purposes only. And there's no derivative works, where you can only use the original image and not images derived from it. All right. there are all sorts of places that you can go to get free images. All right, I'm not going to go and tell you one is better than the other. Now, again, many of the images and icons available on the web are licensed under Creative Commons. That's what we just looked at. Stock photos are typically produced in studios. A lot of times you can purchase them for a one-time fee. Sometimes they're as cheap as $1. Sometimes they're several $100s. You can search for specific images and icons using, Google Images, for example, too. All right, and the very last thing that's discussed in the chapter here is on how to create favicons. Remember, a favicon is when you've got up here, when you've got your tab, it's the picture that you associate with a tab. Now, back in Chapter 3, we learned how to add a favicon to a page. This figure shows how you can create a favicon. To start, you should know that a favicon is just a special purpose icon. Like other icons, they should always be stored in a file with a .ico extension. That's because, at least for IE, that's all that it will recognize. Now, there are different programs that you can use, such as Axialis Icon Workshop, which is a software product that lets you create and convert icons. There's Photoshop plugins, which is free software that you can use with Photoshop. There is View, which is a free image converter that you can download. And there is favicon from Pix, which is another free image converter. Now, in the book, they actually give you not just this particular listing, but they give you all the URLs. So just remember that a favicon is a small image that appears to the left of the title in the tab for the page. All right. Typically, a favicon is 16 pixels wide and 16 pixels tall and has an .ico extension. You can create an ICO by using an icon editor, which is a program that converts an image to an ICO file, or a web-based converter. And that pretty much is it for this chapter. So when I come back again, I will be going over Chapter 10, which I have not brought up yet, and will right now. And Chapter 10, as you can see, is on working with tables. So I will be back with that video shortly.